Hello and welcome to the smartest moron where... Okay, let's talk about bad games in this channel for a hot minute. I've been trying to avoid bad games lately, partly because I want people who have never heard of these titles to get interested in them, like Shin Megami Tensei. The other reason is related to my overall stress levels with regards to many factors, so I try to limit it. So when I review something as inferior like Shadow Hearts from the New World, I don't go into it expecting to hate the game, and making a script out of that. I expect to have a good time and be entertained, and hopefully share those experiences, and if I can't, then share my frustrations in an attempt to either be funny or relieving myself of the stress. For games that truly pissed me off, however, I was hoping that would end once I reviewed the DMC reboot. Hell, you probably noticed in my reviews that I have been far less angry and bitter about some elements. Well, compared to the old reviews anyway. But sometimes, reviewing a title I don't like is bound to happen. Were that the case, I would be more professional and the score would be higher since some of those games actually do have some legitimately good gameplay. You know, barring the third birthday and a few other titles, which means chances are, yeah, the DMC reboot would at least get a 3 out of 5 from me. But again, this is a channel expressing my opinion on these titles and focusing primarily on the story as well. Plus, if a game is bad, well, I don't want to waste gigabytes of data I just recorded if I can help it. And the sad part is, this kinda also goes with good games too, where my brain just dies when trying to form a script. Yeah, that Lost Odyssey footage, that was meant to be a review that I just got burnt out on. This is why I don't try focusing on multiple games at once. In today's case, well, I have to cover it if I'm going to play Xenosaga 3. I just want to say all of this before diving into a game that honest to God felt like I was being tortured. For you see, Xenosaga 2 is one of the biggest reasons I avoided this series when I was younger. In fact, the standard mindset for some people at the time followed something like this.
So you like Xenosaga?
Yes.
What the is your problem?
Reviews did not help this mindset, as the best score I ever saw for the game was a 1.5 out of 5. But once I eventually got interested in the entire series, I knew I had to try it for myself. Back then, I hated it. I hated the washed out colors, I hated the change with some of the voice cast, and I absolutely hated the combat system. Because I wasn't well versed in it, some fights would take me well over an hour. Back then, I was a hell of a lot more impatient and I just skipped straight to game 3. I barely remember the plot from what I saw on YouTube. Now though, with some help from friends who love the series and, well, are actually good at this game, I could see some good in the story, fragmented as it is. The gameplay though, well, I see some interesting ideas. That is the best compliment I can give the gameplay. Let's just start this review and end my nightmares. At least I'll be more positive with the plot. Kind of.
With her on our side, we can't lose.
The gameplay has changed quite a bit where... Okay, let's address the egg-sized elephant in the room. There's been a big style change with the graphics. Why was this done? The previous director and creator of the series, Tetsuya Takahashi, stepped down as he tried to tackle other responsibilities within Monolith Soft. Another reason given was the fear of development time taking way too long with him at the helm, so he decided to let others take on the task. Ko Arai would handle directing both games 2 and 3, and the decision for the graphics seemed to be made to make better facial animations. I know some people love this change, but I just can't stand it and it bothers me a lot. The one positive I can admit are the changes in character design. Momo no longer looks like a frigging lolly and I'm super grateful for that, even if her new voice is pretty bad when casting ether magic.
Mystic powers, grant me a miracle! Mystic powers, grant me a miracle! Mystic powers, grant me a miracle!
If I had to suffer from this line, so do you. I also appreciate Junior no longer wearing his pajamas, and Chaos here has a fairly cool design. All those belts though, I'm just waiting for him to appear in the next Guilty Gear game. Thankfully Game 3 will manage to find a mix between the two styles, although of all the characters I feel hurt by this change, it's definitely Shion. Not her new outfit or anything, just she feels less refined than her friends. Anyway, back to the gameplay. At first it seems to be exactly the same, yet there are many differences. For starters, characters no longer have an individual boost meter, and you can see how many boosts an enemy has, both sides having a maximum of 3. It also seems to build a bit quicker as well, and even stays the same after a fight, so you are encouraged to use them more often. There are new event panels that seem to cycle around the nothing panel from before, adding an extra layer of unpredictability. I actually like this, as it makes boosting easier and encouraged, though enemies still abuse it, both their emergency boost and if you wait too long when thinking of an action. And honestly, that kinda makes me laugh since that just shows even the game itself is impatient. Tech attacks are gone entirely too. Rather, you rely on a set of button inputs. Some characters have physical combos while others can only fire off long-range shots, and they all have certain elements associated with their attacks. I'm not sure why Momo has a bow instead of a wand, but I welcome it as her damage output is disgusting and I love it. Some characters though lack a long-range attack, which confuses me since in Game 1, everyone demonstrated their varied skill sets. Hell, despite the destruction animation having Shion using close-range attacks, she can only use long-range moves. Maybe that's why she's so pissy. They took away her ability to punch things, so she takes it out on her brother instead. These new button inputs are important due to a new feature: zones. Enemies will have resistances to certain attacks, and a weakness that can be chained together to hit an enemy with full damage. Add elements into the mix, and your damage output will be frigging huge. Early on for regular encounters, this isn't too important, just needing to find the right character who can deal a lot of damage. And I do appreciate being able to swap out party members in a fight, making sure each and every character is useful just in case one element is not working out. Once a zone is broken, they enter a break status effect, and attacks must be chained together that way to take full advantage of the situation, since their defense will be down. One annoying thing is that you have to use the boost command to chain these attacks together. Even if you knock an enemy down, they will get back up in the next turn, although if you knock an enemy to the air, they will be on the ground for one more turn. The chances are you probably still can't do that much. The second issue comes with the stock meter. No longer is there AP, and you have to charge the stock command. Although some characters can have it randomly boosted up by 1 when attacking, and I'm not sure what the requirements are for that. As such, this is where combat drags on in many fights, including random encounters for how much HP they have. And considering you need to build up stock meter in order to do combos to really damage an enemy, well, I think you can pretty much guess how your turns are going to end up. Maybe sprinkling some healing magic here and there. Some enemies can't be broken and require weaknesses to hit rather than focusing on the zones, but those enemies are kinda rare. You can gain bonuses if characters have certain elements to their skills, like using the Ether Sword spells. However, characters have their own elements to consider, and well, the sword spells honestly don't work on them like with Chaos, so you may want those type of characters to lead the combo and let the rest stack on the attack bonuses. Shion probably has it the worst of all, throwing in a beam that interrupts her combo damage of electric attacks. Unless it's a robot, Shion ain't really worth using. I appreciate them trying to cut down battle time by getting rid of tech attacks, but this just adds unnecessary turns of doing nothing and feels boring. It's an interesting system that could work, but not so for turn-based games. Maybe it was put into oh wait, that's the chain attack system from the Xenoblade series. In fact, some elements seem to have been taken from 2 are incorporated into those other games. And while that is great that the developers were able to take existing ideas and improve on them, that sadly doesn't improve this game. Speaking of time consuming, it feels like the story is stretched out to justify these long sections of gameplay. For example, there is one segment where they dive into Momo and Junior's memories, and sprinkled through an actually interesting story are random Gnosis enemies, and you go through the same area twice but with different weather conditions. The worst one though is this stronghold in the way of the gang getting to their destination. How much story significance is there? Absolutely none. Oh sure, named characters like Richard and Herman are involved, who only get their human appearance shown in the DS version, and they kinda remind me of people from a Tales game. But at best, it shows Richard is unstable as he uses a giant gun to blow up a section of the base, except he never did this in my boss fight for some bizarre reason. Aside from that, the slow battles coupled with some slow yet admittedly challenging puzzles make this drag out for 3 hours. And if I didn't utilize the combo system, I would have been stuck here longer. But here's the worst thing. My levels were in the 40s. Yeah, there was a segment where you control only Shion, and she's given her enemies her attacks just tear right through, making any challenge laughable since if it did require combos to kill him in her solo section, anyone would have thrown the game in the trash. And since experience is divided among party members, she would get a ton of it by herself, making leveling up a trivial task. I basically went from the low 20s to my late 40s in just a few hours. By the time I resumed the story and reunited with the gang, they were already at level 44. I feel kinda defeated that despite all that grinding I did, it just didn't matter. Well, at least there was a good defense boost, but some enemies made even that feel worthless, especially with Shion and Momo. Now I know what you're thinking, surely there are some ether skills to mitigate this pain, right? Well, that's kinda the thing. Almost all of them are worthless. While healing skills are valuable, you're limited in what you can get, forced to use low tier magic unless you somehow get some good healing items. More on that in a bit. Even parts I used to gain Erde Kaiser got nerfed to hell and back. Plus there are a ton of status effects that are presented poorly. When you get a status effect, there are orbs that flow above your character. And that's it. The only way to know what you're afflicted with is by pressing X and looking at the left. Then there's the way these effects are treated. They are categorized by certain letters, and so are the ether spells necessary to cure them. For example, during this annoying boss fight, Chaos was afflicted with a special type of poison that did a lot of damage. I had a spell to cure L-type status specs. This new poison was an H-type, to which I had no cure for at the moment. I don't understand the need to make this skill tree so complicated. Speaking of which, let's go over that. You see all of this? You need two sets of points, class points and skill points. The only way to gain class points are through rare encounters, boss fights, certain items, and by gathering all of the skills in that section. This means you may have to learn some skills you may never even use just to gain access to the better skills, which was my biggest complaint about trying to gain skills from items in the last game. There is at least one positive in that all the passive skills actually stack up, so you aren't limited in equipping them like certain other upgrades, which means yes, there is technically no gear to collect for the humanoid characters, although there are certain skills you can technically equip like boosting up stats or something like that, except for one thing, the bikini, which means yeah, in case you haven't noticed, I've been fighting in the bikinis often in this game. Like a ridiculous amount. That's because they up the skill points needed and they help save on the grinding. There's also another thing I didn't mention, clear save data. So if you have save data from the first game, you do get swimsuits for both Cosmos and Ziggy. It really doesn't seem like much, but honestly this is going to be better than what you get in Game 3. There are technically skills characters can use when together, like the dual attack seen in Chrono Trigger. You can even do combinations of either spells to have better effects. The problem? I never felt a need to use these. Actually, if you can't tell by me not changing the footage, I never used them beyond a tutorial. The combo move would just kill my damage streak, though I'm sure they are entertaining to watch, at least from what I saw on YouTube. As for the ether combos, well, I already explained grinding to over level 40. Difficulty is not really a problem most of the time with this game. It's the length of battles that can sometimes take up to 10 minutes for a standard grunt fight. The only time the gameplay has actually made me sweat was when I faced these enemies trapped in crystals in the final dungeon. Also, for the love of God, unless you are using a guide, do not engage with these enemies in the final dungeon. For some bizarre reason, they decide to hide some of the strongest enemies on the way to the final boss. They have a ton of health and hit for a ridiculous amount of damage. And if you fail to kill them with the combo, they will be able to kill your party with ease and even restore their HP. Why can they do something so bullcrap?
Nanomachine, son!
And you believe it's taken me this long to bring that up? There is also positioning to consider, as in some fights, you may be hit from both sides by multiple bows. Hits in the backs are naturally going to hit much harder, which just makes the fights more annoying as you build up the stock meter. At least you can technically take advantage of some fights and position characters your own way. Sometimes it might be for the best too in order to avoid certain moves. The only downside is that your character can't turn around once they move for some bizarre reason. Again, I don't know why this was done, and it just means that you better have a boost ready to attack on the next turn, or the enemy will smell the fresh blood and punish you harshly for it. So wait, what about the eggs units? Well, those are gone for good. What exactly happened to them? Good question. We never know. Instead, you have to manage the ES units, which now is a completely different playstyle. For some bizarre reason, you only have 2 in a fight, and the combat system is remarkably simple. You have a close and long range attack, and by charging up the meter over time, through attacks or manually charging, you can unleash a special attack, all of which is dependent on who is the second person riding the ES unit. There's honestly not much to these sections, and in a way, that's kind of a weird balance to the overcomplicated ground combat. It's simple and kind of for the best really, so my brain doesn't explode. This is also the only time you can equip accessories. They can also level up, but unfortunately your characters can't level up while riding them because reasons. One of the biggest changes is the lack of a shop. Money is no longer a thing, so you have to rely on item drops from within areas and enemies. Fortunately, I seem to notice that parties on reserve teams seem to regain their AP over time, basically making them as a free healing tank. Compared to everything else, this is the least of the game's problems, and I honestly have no issue with it. Without I have to grind for skill points alone, the last thing I wanted was to grind for extra cash. There is a way you can still sell stuff, but that only helps Matthews and takes a very long time to do so, given the amount of money he owes. Speaking of Matthews, there are actually a ton of side quests, and a lot of them are pretty damn boring. Sometimes they can be funny, but the majority of them are fetch quests and some confusing, like this paralyzed delivery man who doesn't know who the letters go to, yet somehow knows where the people who need to get them are. Some do have interesting puzzles, and I admit, I like the one where you have to find a drink to cure hangovers from Matthews, and a robot has to simulate his boss. Kinda makes me wish Bender was in this game. There is also a post-game, involving many new side quests, even involving the likes of Erde Kaiser, and from what some friends have told me, canonical information. While I do praise the game for at least having a plethora of content to make up for some of its shortcomings, I just couldn't play this. The problem is that I didn't even have fun within the first 30 hours. Why would I subject myself to another stretch of time like that with harder enemies? There's nothing anyone can do to make me continue this game, barring paying my student loans, but no one is stupid enough to do such a thing. At least we have music now, and my god, it makes such a difference. Though I could do without the realistic sounds in cities and labs, as the noise just grated on my ears, even making me tired in some cases. Fortunately, I have some positive things to say about the plot, so let's skip to that now.
But
Please, go on. Bring the truth of this conflict, the truth hidden in that data, to light. Please do this one thing for me.
Captain Uzuki,
I'm counting on you. So, farewell.
The story actually continues from where the first game left off. Eventually. Technically, the first part introduces the ES units and what else occurred on Old Miltia. In Game 1, we got to see some of what happened that day through the eyes of Shion and Jr., with the former losing her parents and the latter having to deal with Berserk URTVs. The beginning of this game kinda dives a bit more into the latter, letting us know what happened through the perspective of Chaos, who finally gets more plot relevancy, though don't expect it to last too long, and Shion's brother, Jin Uzuki, who we did technically see and hear in Game 1, but voice actors were changed for many people. We also learned more about how the Song of Nephilim affects Realians, all of them going berserk. Chaos rides one of the mobile suits into the city alongside the new character Kanan, and while the voice acting for Kanan may seem dull, it's technically on purpose, as he's a Realian with suppressed emotions, likely to help resist the Song of Nephilim. After Jin saves their asses, they eventually face down Margulis, discovering the rivalry the two share. And I gotta admit, I find it amusing as all hell that despite this series having ghost aliens, giant robots, and androids that wear questionable clothing, we still have enough room to throw in badass sword fights. Not even fricking lightsaber ones, just regular swords. I'm not even mad. In fact, this demonstrates how despite taking a hit in the visual department in many places, the fight scenes are epic and demonstrate the nature of this game. Action. While there are many story bits, action is definitely more present, and it's not just Cosmos acting as the savior of the day. After Margulis is defeated by his greatest nemesis, Gravity, Jin uploads some important data into Kanan, which we later know is the Y data. Something mentioned in the last game that wasn't really explained all that well. To save some time, and the game thankfully does explain this later, this has data that has information on Joachim Mizrahi, the man believed to be responsible for summoning the Gnosis into the world, as well as who helped cause this mess in the first place. The data is both in Kanan and Momo, hence why Albedo tried to kidnap her. Speaking of which, that's kind of the main goal of this game, to obtain the Y data and discover the real threat. Naturally, they have to rely on Kanan later on since, well, as they try to rely on Momo, let's just say shit goes down. Character relationships are explored while new ones are introduced. The U-Tic organization in particular is expanded upon, along with some religious stuff here and there, trying to lay it on thick far more than the first game. We also get some more info on the past of Junior and Albedo that I will dive more into the spoiler section, especially since Albedo is keeping the reins as the big bad of the game, though it's not a role he shares alone, where this evil Pope guy eventually takes over the plot. And there's some stuff dealing with Guinan that was kinda hinted at Game 1, but easily missable. Unfortunately, the main antagonist is just... well, let me put it this way. The gameplay is more exciting than he is. He is suddenly shoved into this game with no real build-up, and he just feels evil for the sake of evil and is boring as a result, and eventually just fades into the background as we have to build up the other villains of the series. Much as I hate to say it, I think Barthandelus is more interesting than this guy. One thing I often see criticized is how Shion is portrayed, how she became more of a quote-unquote bitch. Her anger is only ever really directed at Jin though. Maybe sometimes at Alan, but that was really just one single point and their lives were on the line. He may not be a fighter, but he was in charge of the damn firearms of the dang robot. As for her dislike of Jin, I feel like I need to play Game 3 to defend it a tad more, but I will try my best here. She kinda seems to blame him for their dead parents and always seems at odds with whatever he does, like refusing to put flowers on the graves of their parents simply because their bodies weren't there. Or her constant dismissal of Jin's lifestyle choices, like when he changed his profession from being a doctor to being a bookstore owner. His explanation for it though kinda makes me rethink their relationship. He described being a doctor as more being a counselor these days thanks to nanomachines, implying he might not hold value in conversations. and for as much as Shion pulls away, he tries to pull her in as opposed to having a normal conversation, such as trying to dissuade Shion from continuing her travels with Junior. He is ultimately concerned for her safety, but his attitude isn't making things better. There's no real middleman to help with this, so having a strained relationship like this makes total sense. Not to mention there is still trauma she is dealing with as well, enough to cause some scars, which could explain why Jin can be a tad overbearing. Again, I think I need to replay Game 3 to properly explain the relationship. Also, Alan broke her glasses, which were apparently a gift from her dead boyfriend, so I imagine she's a bit pissy. Just look at her walk cycle. Plus, it's not like she's unhelpful. She tries to help Junior with his relationship with Albedo, even when the bad guy has his hand through. You know what? I heard of a reach around, but I don't think the reach through is gonna get popular. Another criticism was how Junior was suddenly the star of the story, when honestly, this switch of protagonists happened in Game 1 the moment Albedo got involved in the plot. However, I feel a remedy to that would have been to have some more dungeons set around Shion, Jin, and Cosmos' problems. Why do I feel this way? Well, Junior got 2 dungeons dedicated to him with changes in the season, and showing off the relationship of Albedo in his past. Shion does get her own dungeon, but her story is barely touched on, so having the next one looking at it more, or even Jin for that matter, would be ideal. And instead, those dungeons I complain about, they barely even have a story. You can cut this stuff out, and nothing would really be all that different. Richard and Herman don't really add anything. And when Pellegrini comes in for a boss fight, someone who has ties to Jin and Margulis, her fight adds nothing of substance. The only valuable thing I learned was how U-Tic was experimenting with the Gnosis to create soldiers of their own, which is definitely a major red flag for this organization. Then they like their self-destruct mechanisms to involve ritualistic candles for some reason. The story feels stretched out as a result. Overall, Xenosaga 2 is not a good game. It has interesting elements at least, and even has some interesting fight scenes and music, along with some good story moments, but for all that stuff, I just recommend watching the cutscenes on YouTube. I understand a game can be loved purely for the plot. Hell, I defended some games with fairly outdated or broken gameplay because they had more to them, but when a game makes me so miserable that I feel tired or on the verge of crying after a tough day, I can't really defend that. Now it's time for some spoilers to return to some positivity.
What's going on? What's wrong? Work! Come on, work!
The Zohar does not exist for your sake.
Who's there?
We'd appreciate it if the supporting actors could just stick to their roles.
So let's talk about Junior and Albedo. The flashbacks and dialogue reveal more info about the URTB's lifestyle, how there were 4 unique variants with their own independent thoughts, while the rest of the kids all share a hive mindset. There is a line by Chaos early on in the game where he describes Guinan and Junior as certain horsemen, referring to the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Albedo here is more of a coward, always willing to be near Junior. The game tries to explain this as the 2 being conjoined twins at birth, but given how wimpy he is and how competent Junior can be, that would have worked fine for a reason. Albedo though also proves he's a little shithead even back then by having a superiority complex, looking down at the other URTBs not like him, going so far as to beat them down when they attack the group. Still, they try not to make him too unlikable before his crazy heel turn by exploring his immortality, revealing he thought every one of them could just regenerate. He tries to tell Junior this after being confronted by him, and he does. Well, this video is gonna get demonetized, if my channel was officially affiliated anyway. Rather than constantly being awed at his immortality, he actually understands the horror of his abilities, realizing his brothers can die while he can't, leaving him alone. It's actually kinda interesting. One of the first games I saw tackling the issue with immortality before Lost Odyssey did so as the entire concept. And it's not like it ends here, as it is linked with Albedo's ultimate goal. He would be persistent in his cleanliness until they tried to combat Udo on Old Miltia. Now, this is where I have to warn everyone. I'm not the best analyst for Xenosaga by a long shot. Whatever info I get is from the internet, what the game tries to tell me, and my friends who can make more sense of this. So, with that said, now I have to explain more things about Udo. When I said this was God and made that Shin Megami Tensei reference, well, that was kind of a joke, and kind of not. It's not the God you were thinking of, but something else, something that when in contact with it, anyone who survives basically turns insane, as seen in the beginning of the game. So when Junior's afraid, it's not just because it's Udo. See, Junior's power is called the Red Dragon mode, which at first made me think he was gonna grab the boobs of every female character, like the idiot of the same title in High School DxD. Yes, I actually watched that willingly. From what I could tell, it's dangerous, enough to overkill Albedo based on the dialogue. In fact, he received a vision of the planet being destroyed by his power thanks to Udo. Fearing such a thing, he ended up breaking the link, causing many people to go insane. This is also apparently why he stopped aging, fearing the dragon would just grow out of control, so he stayed young. It kind of fits his character too, unable to fully move on from the trauma and remain frozen in time. However, there's more to the situation. While I don't doubt some of the contact made Albedo insane, he was technically saved by Sakura, something only revealed in the DS version of Xenosaga, as Game 2 never explained certain things that just made me raise more eyebrows. This created conflicting feelings in Albedo, since one part was grateful for her help, hence why he was so interested in Momo and her sisters, even to the point of those sisters being seen as angels to him, carrying him away to the afterlife after he dies. On the other hand, he very clearly hates her for trying to take Junior away from him, which explains all the horrible ways he treats Momo's sisters, and later pummeling a fake version of Sakura. Still, considering the area surrounding them seems to be made up of Udo waves, it's no wonder Albedo is so damn insane. Yet at the same time, he is able to prove he has some semblance of sanity. When Junior is able to finally gain the courage he needs to use his power, he and Albedo fight, and fight is a generous word. Notice Albedo's actions. He rarely if ever hits Junior, and at the beginning of the fight, he casts an ether spell on Junior, one that can revive him after losing all his HP. Basically, it's the auto life spell from Final Fantasy. Then Albedo just taunts him. With the memory skill, he gives Junior the cheat sheet to break him and do massive damage. The only time he ever did damage was when I was taking too long to kill him, and when he finally died, he just unleashed an explosive force of energy that nearly KO'd Junior, but the auto life doesn't expire, so it would really do nothing. So rather than explain it through dialogue and spelling it out, the gameplay is able to show Albedo's strong desire to die by Junior's hands. Not just because Junior was likely the only one who could do it, but because Albedo probably would have preferred if the person he admired most did him in. And the only way he could was by pushing Junior's buttons as far as he could. Junior had to be forced into using the mode after all, so I doubt asking nicely was just gonna work. Also again, insane madman with the mentality of a child as he always wants attention. Hell, he kinda proves this in some scenes like egging on Margulis in the first game. And so eventually Albedo dies, giving Junior a warning about Guinan, and I'm sure we'll never see him again. Ever. Totes real, yo. Okay, I can't even keep this up anymore. He becomes the White Testament. I would call this story really good if it wasn't for the stretched out story, and if Albedo had some better focus. AKA, this might have been a hell of a lot better based on what the DS game did. It certainly gave Sakura more of a purpose beyond just a plot device for many of the characters. Although technically, it's not completely over due to Game 3, but we'll get to that in time. As the series goes on, characters are trying to discover and learn about their humanity, or even learning to accept certain things about themselves, as we saw with Junior's struggles with his own powers. Ziggy and Momo show the most of this. One of the major issues Momo faced in Game 1 was trying to get close to her mother, yet we never knew why. It's always assumed that it was because she was a part of Joachim's experiments, and his reputation for bringing the Gnosis likely caused some distance to be formed. In reality, Momo received a lot of attention because of the 100 series Realians. You see, they were all based off the dead daughter of Joachim, Sakura, the same person Junior tried to help out. So when Albedo hurts Momo in the first game, it's like he's hurting the friend Junior had all those years ago. And when they're trying to extract the Y data from Momo, she starts to have fears about her emotional state just being a function, not being seen as a real person when her mom is clearly using her at first. And that's where Ziggy comes in, demonstrating his growth by comforting Momo and having more of a sincere talk with her mother. They manage to bond over the shared loss of their own children, and Julie eventually shares why she is so distant with Momo. Ziggy ends up reminding her that Momo has her own consciousness, her own feelings, and that she is her own person despite the fact that she was programmed with those feelings. The talk surprisingly seems to work. Seriously, I was expecting this to be dragged out for a long ass time. The conversation is so helpful that's even the reason why when Albedo's trap triggers, she hesitates to destroy Momo's mind to make sure the data isn't given to him. The three of them even seem to get along by the end of the game, with Ziggy agreeing to receive surgery to extend his lifespan, finding renewed purpose in protecting Momo. While I can't say much about Cosmos sadly, or even Chaos for that matter who gets even less stuff to do, we do fortunately get some more stuff with Shion and Jin. In the previous game, a woman named Fabronia came to Shion through visions and aided her when the gang were pulled into their own subconscious. She wanted Shion to help her sisters, but of course, everyone has to be super vague about this crap. So when Shion finally sees her sisters, well, remember those experiments I talked about in the story section with the Gnosis and everything? Well, they kinda did the same thing to the children for reasons. Well, okay, it was to use the Zohar and everything, and to save some time since the game does not explain this, they were likely developed by Joachim Mizrahi, who also developed Fabronia. So we can assume they were special and had something to do with the Zohar. That is the best explanation I can give. With the evil Pope about to activate the Zohar, Cosmos plans to take out the children, with Shion refusing, only to have Baronia reveal what she really meant. To save those kids, she meant to kill them, likely so they could join her in the afterlife and finally be cut from life support. So why is it so important to Xion's character? Well, it emphasizes just how much different she is compared to the rest of the party. Every playable character has either been made for war or experienced enough hardship to mostly know what to do in the right situation. Momo is the one exception, but even she was built for combat situations. Again, the ridiculous amount of damage output she does in this game. I'm not saying Shion hasn't been through trauma, she just constantly suppresses it and is thus horrified when she sees stuff like this happening, sometimes unable to keep a level head. I suppose this could explain what happens in Game 3 as well, but there's still some stuff that needs to be covered. Jin tries to help her and seems to actually be effective to a point. That's kind of the major thing about Jin. He definitely wants to help his sister, but isn't quite so good with words. What he said earlier about quitting as a doctor makes sense, since he claimed how, at best, he could be a counselor given the advancement of medicine and nanomachines. He definitely gives the vibe of doing things his own way and it being better. That's not to say the dude is completely selfish or ignorant to the point of being an asshole, it's just communication might not exactly be his strong suit, or if it is, it's clearly in things he wants to talk about. There might be another reason, but again, gotta wait for Game 3. For now though, I will say there is a reason he told the gang to go on ahead without him when extracting the info out of Kanan. And I think we can stop there because there's only so much I can pull out of my ass. Thank you again for joining me on my journey to revisit the Xenosaga series. And hopefully it'll be all worth it for the final game. And maybe some of the side content. And when I say side content, there's a lot more than I thought was going on. Chances are we might actually dive into that before Xenosaga 3. I still haven't fully decided yet, so I'll see you next time with whatever I come up with. And who knows, maybe my opinion on Xion's character will change. Maybe, I honestly don't know.